have a wonderful electronic invention I want you to see. It looks something like this.
Hey guys, and welcome back to Unimig. Today I'm going to show you everything that you need to know about setting up the new Razor 200 PULSE MIG. So first things first, we'll cover what all the buttons do and how to navigate the digital screen. The first is via the touch screen, so you can tap or swipe to move through the setting menus and select your desired parameters. The second is by using the scroll knobs. The left knob is used to scroll through the menu options, and pressing it will select or confirm setting. It is also used to adjust weld parameters like the Y speed in MIG and the current in TIG and stick. The right knob has no navigational ability, but is used to adjust weld parameters like voltage in MIG, the weld cycle options in TIG, and the arc force in stick. The back button will return you to the previous screen or close the pop-up window when pressed. The menu button will open the main menu when pressed. When you first turn on the Razor 200 Pulse, the first screen that you will load into is MIG. When you're in the MIG welding screen, the first thing you can select is the type of MIG welding that you want to do. In the top settings menu, selecting the second option will give you a pop-up screen where you can either select whether you want a manual, Synergic, pulse or double pulse MIG modes. When manual mode is selected, you can adjust your voltage and wire feed speed yourself, like a traditional MIG machine. The left knob will control the wire feed speed, and the right knob controls the voltage. Selecting Synergic puts you into Synergic mode, where you have access to our tried and tested pre-programmed recommended settings. You choose your material thickness using the left knob, which you can see at the bottom of the screen, and the machine will calculate the optimal voltage and wire feed speed automatically to suit. Selecting the pulse option will put you into single pulse MIG. Our single pulse MIG is also Synergic, so you can set your current to suit your material thickness and the machine does the rest for you. The last MIG mode is double pulse. Choosing double pulse will allow you to select your peak currents on the main menu. More adjustments to the arc can be made in the advanced settings, which we'll cover in a moment. The third option in the top setting bar is the torch mode, which will allow you to swap between 2T, 4T and spot. 2T, which stands for 2 touch, means that you'll need to hold the trigger down on your MIG torch while you weld. Releasing it will stop the weld. 4T or 4 touch means that you can click the trigger to start the weld and the torch will continue to weld until you click it again to turn it off. Spot mode will produce a series of consecutive and evenly timed arcs, perfect for even tacks and small welds. When in spot mode, you can select how long you want the arc to be on. When the trigger is pressed, the torch will only weld for a set amount of time. The fourth setting is hot start. Hot start gives you a boost in current at the start of your weld, eliminating issues with starting on cold metal and making welding on thicker materials and aluminium easier. Clicking into this setting will allow you to turn it on and off. The fifth setting on the menu is free job, which is the job saving function. We'll cover this feature in more depth later on. The seventh option is the wire type. Here you can select which wire you're using. In order, the choices are SG2 or mild steel, CRNI or stainless steel, ALMG5 or 5356 aluminium, ALSI5 or 4043 aluminium, and CUSI3 or silicon bronze. The eighth setting allows you to select your wire diameter. Depending on the wire type you've selected, you'll be limited to set wire diameters. For example, selecting stainless steel wire will only allow you to select 0.8mm and 0.9mm wire diameters. The ninth setting is the gas mixture. Like with wire diameter, only select gases are available depending on the wire type. For example, with stainless steel selected, your gas options are limited to 98.2. In comparison, having an aluminium wire selected will only allow you to choose argon as your gas mixture. The wire type and diameter, as well as the gas mixture setting, all only apply to the Synergic and pulse modes. If you're in manual MIG, you won't need to worry about them at all. The sixth setting along the top bar is the advanced settings menu. The settings available in the advanced menu will change depending on your weld type. For manual MIG, you will have the following settings: inductance, burn back timer, pre-gas timer, post-gas timer, and spot timer. The inductance setting, which determines how long it takes the current to rise to the set amperage, can be adjusted up or down by 10. The inductance gives you more control over your arc characteristics. If you minus the inductance, you'll get a harder, narrow weld pool that freezes quickly. If you increase the inductance, you'll get a soft, fluid weld pool that wets into the toes as well. The burn back setting, which adjusts how far back the wire will burn when the torch trigger is released, can be set up or down by 10. By turning the burn back up, the stick out when the trigger is released will be longer, while turning it down will make it shorter. The pre-gas timer, which determines how long gas will flow over the weld before the arc ignites, can be adjusted between 0.1 seconds and 3 seconds. The post-gas timer, which determines how long gas will flow over the weld after the arc ends, can be adjusted between 0.1 seconds and 3 seconds. When the spot mode is selected, the spot timer setting is where you can select how long the arc will be ignited for when a torch trigger is pressed. It can be set between 0.5 seconds and 25 seconds. Spot timer is only available when in manual MIG. Some settings depend on the torch mode. Moving on to the Synergic advanced settings. On top of the most of the manual MIG settings, you'll also have hot start current, hot start timer, hot start slope, inductance correction, burn back timer, pre-gas timer, stop slope, stop timer, stop current, post-gas timer, and glick level. The glick function allows you to lower the current during a MIG weld by tapping the torch switch while a welding cycle is going. This allows for more refined control of the heat input for long-range welding, giving you more options in weld bead formation. It only works when in 4T mode though. It can be turned on or off, and when on, the amount of current that is trimmed during a weld can be set between 20% and 90%. Glick provides the option to add a manual pulse of sorts to your weld. The hot start setting can be switched on or off. When switched on, it will provide an initial burst of current, improving the arc ignition. Turning hot start on will also adjust the additional hot start settings. With hot start on, you can select how hot you want it to start by adjusting the additional current from 20% up to 150% of the set amperage range. Setting this below 100% will result in a cold start. With hot start on, select how long you want the hot start to last, from 0 seconds to 10 seconds. With hot start on, select how long it takes to reach the set amperage from hot start amperage from 0 seconds or instantaneously up to 10 seconds. When you finish a weld and release the torch trigger, you'll end the end sequence of the weld, where the current and voltage will decrease, filling the end of the weld at a lower power to eliminate craters and pinholes. The stop slope setting will allow you to choose how long it takes to go from your set current to the stop current, from 0 seconds or instantly up to 20 seconds. The stop current setting is where you select how hot or cold you want your weld to finish. You can choose to have it end between 20% to 80% of the peak current. The stop timer setting is how long your weld will be on in the stop current before extinguishing. You can have it last from 0 seconds to 10 seconds. The advanced pulse settings are the same as the Synergic settings with one addition: start force. Similar to the hot start function, start force allows you to adjust your starting arc voltage. It can be increased from 0 to 10, with 10 being the most voltage. The start force is only on for the first 200 milliseconds. The advanced double pulse settings include all the single pulse settings, but also include double pulse mode, double pulse frequency, double pulse low current, and double pulse balance. The double pulse frequency is how long it takes to complete the full peak pulse and base pulse cycle. Setting this to 0.5 Hz means it will take 2 seconds to complete the full double pulse cycle. On the other end, at 5 Hz, your pulse will go through its full cycle 5 times in 1 second. You can adjust this regardless of whether you're in standard or advanced mode. Speaking of standard and advanced modes, the next setting on the machine is a double pulse mode. When in standard mode, the double pulse parameters are completely synergic and the machine will choose the best settings for your weld. If you swap to advanced mode, you will be able to manually adjust the double pulse low current and balance. When in advanced mode, you can adjust the low current of your double pulse between 10% and 90%. Setting it to 10% means your low current will only be 10% of your peak current. Turning it up all the way to 90% will mean your low current is 90% of your peak current. Like your double pulse low current, you'll need to be in advanced mode to adjust the double pulse balance. The balance of your double pulse is how long the arc spends in the peak current versus the low current. The balance adjustment will change how long it's spent in the peak current. Setting your balance to 70% will mean your pulse will spend 70% of the full cycle at the peak current and only 30% at the low current. You can adjust this between 10% and 90%. The less time you spend in the peak current, the colder your weld will be. That's all of the MIG settings, so let's move on to TIG. To change from MIG to TIG, select the first setting on the top menu bar to swap between welding types. Once you're in TIG, the second setting on the menu bar will allow you to choose whether you want standard, pulse, or mixed TIG mode. Selecting standard TIG will give you the basic TIG weld cycle. To adjust your amperage, use the left knob. To scroll through and adjust your weld cycle, use the right knob. When you select pulse, you'll still have all the standard weld cycle parameters. Plus, you'll also be able to set your peak and base amps for your pulse. We'll cover all of the available weld cycle and pulse settings in just a minute. The final type is mixed TIG, which vibrates the arc, expanding the weld puddle, and is generally used for applications that have a wider gap to fill. Next up, the third setting along lets you swap between manual and Synergic TIG welding. When in manual mode, you'll have complete manual control over all the parameters of the weld cycle, including any pulse or mix settings. If you swap into Synergic mode, the machine will automatically select the optimal settings for your weld, based on your chosen tungsten size, gas, and material thickness. In this case, your material thickness is adjusted by increasing or decreasing your amps. The fourth option in the top setting bar is the torch mode, which will allow you to swap between 2T, 4T, and spot. 2T, which is standard for 2-touch, means you'll need to hold the trigger down on your TIG torch while you weld. Releasing it will stop the weld. 4T, or 4-touch, means that you can click the trigger to start the weld, and the torch will continue to weld until you click it again to turn it off. It's great for long welds, so you can avoid finger fatigue. Spot mode will produce a series of consecutive and evenly timed arcs, perfect for even tacks and small welds. When in spot mode, you can select how long you want your arc to be on. When the trigger is pressed, the torch will only weld for the set amount of time. The fifth setting on the menu is free job, which is a job-saving function. We'll cover this feature in more depth later on. The seventh option is the material type. Here you can select which type of metal you're welding. In order, the choices are Fe for mild steel, CRNI for stainless steel, and titanium. The Razor 200 Pulse is a DC only machine, so you won't be able to weld aluminium with it when TIG welding. The 8th setting allows you to select your tungsten diameter. For all three metal types, you can choose between 1.6mm and 2.4mm tungsten. The 9th setting is the gas mixture. Because it's TIG, the only gas available is argon. The tungsten type, tungsten diameter, and the gas mixture settings all only apply to the Synergic mode. If you're in manual TIG, you won't need to worry about setting them. The 6th setting along the top bar is the Advanced Settings menu. The settings available in the Advanced menu will change depending on your weld type. When in manual TIG, you'll be able to adjust the following settings: HF switch, pre-gas timer, start current, start timer, start slope, stop timer, stop current, glick level, and post-gas timer. Most of these you'll be able to adjust directly in the weld cycle parameters on the front screen with the right knob, or you can change them within the Advanced Settings menu. The HF switch can be turned off and on. This setting is automatically on, but can be switched off so you can use the torch that doesn't have a button and high frequency start. The pre-gas timer determines how long gas will flow over the weld before the arc ignites, and can be adjusted between 0.1 seconds and 10 seconds. The start current is how hot or cold your arc will start. It can be set between 20% and up to 150% of your peak amps. The lower you set it, the colder your weld will start. For thicker material, a hotter start will help with penetration. The start timer will set how long your start current lasts for, and can be set between 0 and 10 seconds. The start slope lets you select how long it takes to reach the peak amps from the start current. It can be set between 0 seconds or instantaneously up to 10 seconds. Your stop slope is similar to the start slope. It controls how long it takes your amps to go from the peak amps to the stop amperage. It can be set between 0 seconds or instantaneously up to 20 seconds. The stop slope will begin when the torch trigger is released. The stop timer setting is how long your weld will run the stop current for before extinguishing. You can have it last from 0 seconds to 10 seconds. The stop current will determine how hot or cold your weld will finish. It can be set between 20% of the peak amps to 80%. The stop current can only be set to lower than your peak amps because a cooler finish helps to prevent craters and cracks at the end of your weld. The glick function allows you to manually lower your amperage while a welding cycle is ongoing via a button press. This allows for more refined control of the heat input for long-range welding and gives you more options in a weld bead formation. Glick only works when in 4T mode. It can be turned on or off, and when on, the amount of current that is trimmed during a weld can be set between 20% and 90%. Glick provides the option to add a manual pulse of all sorts to your weld. The post-gas timer determines how long gas will flow over the weld after the arc ends and can be adjusted between 0.5 seconds and 25 seconds. If you've set the machine to pulse TIG, you'll get all the standard TIG parameters that we just mentioned, plus the additional pulse settings. Pulse frequency, pulse balance, pulse softness, and pulse low current. The pulse frequency is how many times a pulse cycle of peak and low amps is complete. When this is set to 0.5 Hz, it will take 2 seconds to complete one full cycle. If this is set to 1000 Hz, then the pulse cycle will be completed 1000 times in 1 second, which is very high pitched. The standard frequency for most pulse welding is around 60 Hz. The balance of your pulse is how long the arc spends in the peak amps versus the low amps. Adjusting the balance will change the amount of time spent in the peak current. Setting your balance to 70% will mean your pulse will spend 70% of the full cycle at the peak current and only 30% at the low current. You can adjust this between 25% and 75%. Keep in mind that the less time you spend in the peak current, the colder your weld will be. The pulse softness, which can be turned off or on, works to soften the noise of the arc, especially when a high frequency has been set. The low current setting is where you set what the low amps of your pulse cycle will be, and can be set between 20% and 80%. Setting it to 20% means your low amps will only be 20% of your peak amps. Turning it up all the way to 80% will mean that your low amps are 80% of your peak current. When in mixed TIG mode, your advanced settings will include all the standard parameters, and you'll also get mixed frequency, mixed balance, and mixed softness. The mixed frequency adjusts how often the arc vibrates and can be set between 0.1 Hz to 5 Hz for a slow or fast vibration rate. The high frequency is good for fillet welding, while a lower frequency is good for butt welding. The mixed balance determines how much of each arc cycle is spent vibrating. The balance can be adjusted between 80% to 95%. Setting it to 80% means that the arc will vibrate for 20% of a complete cycle, and a 95% balance means only 5% of the arc cycle will be vibrating. The mixed softness, like the pulse softness, can be turned off or on to soften the noise of the arc. And that's everything there is to know for TIG. Now let's move on to stick. To swap to stick welding, select the first setting on the menu bar and select the MMA option. Because the machine is DC only, you'll only be able to DC stick weld. So the second setting in the menu bar is fixed. The third setting along the top menu is the weld mode, so you can choose between manual or Synergic. When in manual mode, you'll have full control over your stick welds, with adjustments to your amperage and the arc force being controlled by the knobs. If you select the Synergic mode, the machine will calculate the best settings for you, based on your electrode and material thickness. You can set your material thickness by adjusting the amperage knob. The fifth setting on the top menu is where you can select whether you're using a rutile, stainless steel, basic or cellulose electrode. The next setting on the menu lets you input your electrode diameter from 2mm up to 4mm electrodes. The advanced settings are the fourth option along the top menu bar, and this is where you'll find the options for power limit and anti-sticking. First, choose whether you want to turn the power limit off or on. The power limit keeps the amperage consistent throughout the weld by preventing the voltage from exceeding the set value. If you've turned power limit on, then you'll be able to choose your set value here, from 0% to 100%. Select whether you want the anti-sticking turned off or on. The anti-stick feature helps to keep your electrodes from sticking. That's all there is for stick. Next up, we'll go over how to use the free jobs menu option. When in MIG or TIG mode, the fifth available setting on the top menu bar is free job. Clicking on this setting will allow you to load save jobs or save your current settings on the welder as a new job. Once you're in the jobs menu, you have four options. The first option is load job. Selecting load job will open a list of saved jobs. These jobs can be filtered by material, wire diameter, gas type, or your inputted description. Then you can select and confirm the desired job to load the settings. The second option is to save whatever your current settings are as a new job. This will open a pop-up window with a full list of the settings you'll be saving, and you can confirm you want to save. You can also overwrite an existing job by selecting the Save Current Settings as a job option while a current job has been loaded and settings have been altered. Select the Override Current Job option to confirm. The third option is to reset the job settings. If you have changed the settings of a job and want to reset the settings back to the original saved values, select the Reset Job to original values. The last option is to return to free job. If you've loaded onto a job and want to exit and return to free settings, hit the Return to Free Job option. You will get the choice to carry over your saved job settings into free job mode or set the information settings back to default. That's everything you need to know about setting up your new Razor 200 Pulse MIG. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.